I talk for a second?
Excursion into
Coaching. Yaqui, thank you so much for being here. Here we are talking about existential coaching.
Yes.
And we're sitting in Mexico City, actually. For those of you who are listening or watching this, come, because it's amazing. And Yaqui Andrés Martínez Robles, right? Is one of the pioneers in bringing existentialism into Mexico. And I found out that we wrote a book with the same title.
Yeah. And almost at the same time.
Yes, almost at the same time, exactly. You were a little bit earlier, which annoyed me a little. But I think it's great that we're talking, and I think it's great that actually we have a lot in common. I learned a bit of Spanish in your book. Your book is in Spanish, an Introducción al Coaching Existencial. And it's good that we have those series of conversations, because I think existential coaching has a long way to go. And that's why we're here, to expand and develop it and grow it. And so it's nice to meet you. We had a little bit of a chat already. I tried not to ask too many questions then, as I already said, because I'd really like to meet you as fresh as possible with this. So let's just dive in. Could you tell us a little bit about where you're coming from? What was your journey into existentialism and then into coaching? So rather than give us your bio, there'll be a description somewhere, around here with a video or podcast. But what's your story?
Oh, thank you for asking first. And nice to meet you, of course. It's a long trip, actually, because when I was in high school, I was interested in become a producer for a radio station. That's why my main focus, was to become a producer on radio. But in the last month of my high school studies, just before to get into college, my psychology teacher gave the group to read the book Man's Search for Meaning.
Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, exactly. And the book for me was like a very, very moving, very shocking in a lot of senses. So I remember that when I finished the reading of the book, I told to myself, I want to do this the rest of my life.
By this, because he wrote about logotherapy, that's what you wanted to do.
Well, at that moment, I don't know about logotherapy or any different kind of psychologist or whatever. It's just like this kind of work, this kind of meetings, this kind of reflections about life. That's what I want to get into. That's what I want to get deep. So I changed my subscription to college because I was subscribed for study communication and science of communication, and I changed it to psychology. But the psychology I was taught was mainly psychoanalysis, and at that moment I my thinking was, okay, this is psychology, like psychoanalysis is the same as psychology. But maybe 3 years later I start asking, what about Viktor Frankl's? What about? And I ask my teachers, what about Viktor Frankl? Because I'm here because Viktor Frankl. And almost all tell me, oh no, please, that is garbage.
Garbage?
Garbage.
Wow.
Yes,
very
that is
strong.
garbage. Please don't do that. This is hog therapy. This is hog therapy. It's garbage. Please avoid that kind of garbage. But I start to feeling very disappointed, because that's why I tried to become a psychologist. But I was lucky, because one of my teachers told me something different. One of my teachers told me that, here in the university, you're not gonna find anything but Freud. You just can find psychoanalysis. If you want something different, you need to look in someone else, in other places.
Right. This was here in Mexico City?
Yes, Mexico City. So she gave me a brochure from an institute who was organized a conference about different schools on psychotherapy. So I went to that conference and I studied 4 hours of logotherapy, 4 hours of psychodrama, 4 hours of NLP, for different areas, and I fall in love with Gestalt. So when I finished my psychology studies, I start my training as a Gestalt therapist. I become a Gestalt therapist and I start my work as a Gestalt therapist, but I went to my own psychotherapy process, me as a patient. And my therapist told me twice, 3 times, 4 times, a lot of times told me that, Yaqui, you need to read this book. Yaqui, come on, you need to read this book. And the book he was told me that I must read it is the book from Irving Yalom called Existential Psychotherapy.
Yeah.
So I finally bought the book and I read it. And when I read that book, I feel the same that few years ago feel when read Viktor Frankl's book. But in the 4 hours that I study logotherapy, I don't like it. I don't like it, that's why I fall in love with Gestalt, because I don't like it. Well, I don't like logotherapy, not even others. So when I read the Irving Yalom's book, I become very interested in that way of seeing that worldview. So I start reading more about Yalom's books.
He's such a good writer.
Yes, he's such a good writer. I read all his books at that moment. I'm talking about 1997, 1998. So I read all his books. Then I start reading Rollo May's books also. When I finish Rollo May's books, I start to read James Buchenthal books. And when I finish all James Buchenthal books, I want more. So I start searching on the internet. This is 1998. 1998. I start searching in the internet, and there's nothing about existential therapy. Nothing at all. Well, maybe 2,000 entries, 2,000, but 1,999 was about the Irving Yalom's books.
I've read them all, so
exactly.
give me more.
Exactly. So I want more. But one of the pages that I found was the main page, the official page of Irving Yalom, Irving Yalom web page. So there is a button that says contact. So I push it, and it appears to I be able to send an email. I sent an email, and 2 days later, I have a response from Irving Yalom.
Amazing.
Because I was expected that maybe, an assistant or something else respond me. But no, the mail was signed by Irving Yalom. And Irving Yalom told me in that email that until my knowledge, because I was asking him, do you know where can I learn more about this? I read all those books, but I want more. Where can I have training? Where can I have more learning about this? And the answer was, until my knowledge, there's no place in the world where you can learn this.
1998.
1998, yes. So I asked him again, well, come on, but don't you teach it? And he said, no, I just have one class for Stanford in group therapy. I almost retire, so no. But I write it back again, because
Did you say I almost retired at 1998?
Yes, 1998. Yes.
Took him a while.
And for me, it's like he was my hero. I was exchanging mails with my hero. For me, it was like, wow. So I continue writing. I say, but what about you? Don't you teach it? Because if you don't teach this could die. Come on. Then he said, well, in the year 2000, is going to be the Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference. The Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference is known as the Woodstock of psychotherapy. So he told me, come because in that conference, I'm going to lead a couple of workshops. So come. I went, and I went with my Yabam's book, and after one of the workshops, I made the line to have my book signed by him. A line, maybe 100 people, I was in the line, and when I arrived to him, I gave him my book, his book, and I told him, I am the one who wrote you from Mexico. And he said, oh, you finally came. Oh, great. Welcome. And then I don't know how, but I asked him, what about if we have dinner tonight? Maybe he doesn't have this kind of invitations, because he looks very surprised, like, what? I say, okay, I suppose you are in this hotel. We were in the Hilton. I suppose you are in this hotel. What about if we have dinner here in the hotel? In this way, when you feel tired, you can go to your room and no problem. And he said, well, okay.
Wow.
Let's meet at 6 o'clock in the lobby.
Yeah.
So we meet, we have dinner, and I told him about my interest. He saw my passion, my really earn to want to my really hungry, to want to know more. And then he says something to me that is very important till this day. He said, well, what about you teach all of this that you already know and you think is very important to know? What about you teach that? At the moment, I think maybe it was some mistake in my English, because I say, no. What I want is to learn, not to teach. I want to learn. And he answers back. So he says, well, the best way to learn is to teach. So I start teaching in Mexico, Existential Therapy. At the beginning, with his help, he helped me to make the program, the study program, the syllabus. He helped me to build it, and after that I started to teach it here in Mexico. And at the beginning I was involved just in the existential therapy field. I feel very, very, that is my place, I still work in a couple of Gestalt Institute as a teacher now, but I still feel like a Gestalt therapist, but my heart is more existential, more existential. So I feel really at home in the existential field. And I work teaching, training existential therapists, and with my own clients in my private practice. And maybe 8 years ago, more or less, yes, maybe 7, arrives a new client to me and say, Yaqui, I'm here because I have 2 friends that were your clients, and they talked to me about your conversation, the conversation that you usually had, and I want that kind of conversations because I'm in a very special situation now, because my company have a fusion with another company, and my place is to decide, to choose which of my team are going to be in the team for the next year, and who else I need to say it goodbye.
Tough decision.
Yes.
Typical therapy decision. Huh?
Exactly. I need to make this decision. So I need some of the conversation that you usually have with those friends of mine. I want that kind of conversation in order to be able to make this decision wisely, more wise. And I say, okay, but the way that I work is we can meet once per week and all that stuff, a very psychotherapy kind of process. I say, but Yaqui, let me say something. I work with one of the more rich persons in the world. One of the more rich persons in the world is actually Mexican. And he said, I work for him. Yes. I'm just, 2 steps behind him, and I'm in a very top position in the company. So I cannot come to see you once per week. No, it's impossible. No. What I can is maybe once by telephone, maybe once by in your office, maybe sometimes I invite you to my office. Maybe in other times I call you and tell you, what about if we meet in a restaurant and I invite you to lunch, and during lunch we have our conversation.
That must have been an interesting experience.
Yes, exactly. And he told me, Yaqui, I cannot do it in a different way. That is what I can. And I can't always the same day of the week. Maybe someday I can on Monday, another way on Tuesday, another way on Saturday. Some days on the morning, some days in the evening, some days at night. And so maybe in 1 week we can meet 3 times, but then we see each other for a month, and then we see each other again. That's what I can do. And he told me, I already saw a couple of your colleagues, and they don't accept this kind of procedure. They say that doesn't work in that way.
Yeah.
So you are my third option. I really want to work with you. I really want to work. I really need to work, but I can't work in the regular kind.
Weekly coming to the consulting room.
Exactly.
We need some more flexibility.
Exactly. Lot of flexibility.
That all sounds like coaching already.
Exactly.
Were you aware that that's kind of what he was asking for?
Yes. I have a couple of friends who works in the coaching field. And I know they work with this kind of flexibility on the framework. So I told him, what about you look for a coach? And he told me, Yaqui, I don't want to look for a coach. I want to talk with you. I want to talk with you because the kind of conversation that I know you had with my friends is that the kind of conversation that I wanted. It's that one, but with a different framework.
Yeah.
And he says, I can say that now. He says, okay, I want to pay you in advance for 6 sessions in 3 months. 6 sessions. If we cannot meet each other for 6 sessions in 3 months, that's okay. I already pay you because I'm gonna pay you in advance.
It's his commitment.
Yes.
And he knows about commitment.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I'm gonna pay you in advance, and I accept that if you cannot see me when I can, I accept it because this is your rules, of course. Yeah. And then if you can meet me in the morning, I just can in the morning, yes, it's a pity, then we don't see each other that day. That's okay for me. But please, I really want it. I really need it. And I'm available to do it in this way. Yaqui, are you with me? And I say, that's a good experiment.
All right.
I want it. Okay, let's do it. And we do it. We do it for 3 months. And we actually meet just 5 times. And he paid for 6. But we actually just met 5 times. One of those 5 was he picked me up when he was he's going to the airport. He picked me up with his driver. The driver in the front of the car and on the car, and we all go in the back part, talking, and we arrived to the airport. He downed from the car, and the driver drives me back. At the lunch time, then it's an hour that I can do it. So and it was beautiful experience. Our conversations, just 5. But was very, very deep conversations. He is very into, to the dialogue, very into to be open, to be honest, to be with a lot of commitment. I really want to go to the other side of my situation. It's was wonderful for me. So this situation changed my mind about what can I do with the conversations, with the dialogue, with the existential way of conversations, or with the existential way of dialogue.
Yeah, you take it out of the traditional therapy framework, and all of a sudden all of these things are possible.
Exactly.
And we know now these were probably existential coaching conversations.
Exactly.
But when did that terminology come to you?
After that experience, I start to study a little bit more about coaching. You know, I bought books. So I bought books. I started reading about traditional way of coaching. And
do you remember which were the first books you read on coaching?
I read The Inner Game.
That's where it all started, right?
Of course. I read The Inner Game. I read also one book of this Whitmore. The name of the book is Coaching.
Oh, the one I just saw it in the library.
Yes, exactly. And after that, I bought a couple of books that it's a compilation of different articles. That is, in some of them has Gestalt coaching, psychodynamic coaching, existential coaching. So I read all these books. I read some of Monica Hanaway writings. So I read some of those books, and I say, okay, this is something that I can develop more. So I can start more and more. And I have a friend in Colombia. He is the founder of a Logotherapy Institute in Colombia. I have a lot of friends in the logotherapy field. And he starts training in existential coaching. But logotherapy kind of existential coaching.
So very meaning focused.
Very meaning focused, exactly. So we talk about this, and he say, wait, what about you start your training in existential coaching also? So he helped me a little bit, and I, with my readings and then with my existential training, we made a little changes and start to go to a conference of coaching. And I, sometimes I'm a little bit, I not want to say brave, because it's more like crazy. Because I raise my hand and I say, I can offer a talk, I can offer a lecture if you want about existential coaching. Let's see what happens, I said, if you want, I can give a lecture about existential coaching.
Well, you asked Irvin Yalom out for it.
Yes, exactly, yes. It's very similar, Then in the coaching conference in Mexico, in a couple of conferences, they say, no, thank you. But in other two, they say, why not? Come. So I went to the conference and I start to build a position about existential coaching as something that we can do. Because here in Mexico, there is professional coaching. There is very serious, very well done, very ethic. It's here in Mexico, we have very good coaching, but maybe the 80% of the things that you can read or know that use the name coaching are terrible. Maybe 80%.
Terrible how?
Because there are groups of people who made a lot of coercion. They push people until their limits. They make them feel very, very terrible at the beginning. They play even with the lights, so the very down light and with something, a lot of light, and the temperature of the room also. Maybe 2 years ago, no, before the pandemic, 3 years ago, a group of this kind of coaching asked me if I can rent the auditorium of here, the Existential Circle. And they asked me, but can we use the air conditioner? Because we, during our course, and they say it's coaching, during our course, we low temperature until to zero at some moment of the workshop. And 2 hours later, we pull it up around 38 or 39 degrees.
Well, why?
because they want to put you in a very difficult position.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
It's pretty out there.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I can see why coaching has a difficult reputation.
Of course.
We talked about that a little bit earlier.
Yes, of course.
So that's what people know as coaching
Yes.
commonly, other than some professional executive coaching where people understand that this is a facilitative process, that is creative dialogue, rather than pushing people into what you want to make them to do.
Yes. It's a pity, but it's a true. So maybe 80% of, if you watch a small paper, the news, the paper news, you look at this, you saw a lot of advertisement about coaching courses.
All right.
But a lot of them are this kind of coaching. And then the leaders make the people cry a lot, and they say, you are a terrible person, feel guilty because you made a lot of terrible things in your life. We scream, shouting the people. And the people cry a lot. And if you try to record the session, they take off your recording machine. They take off your cell phones at the beginning.
Wow.
Yes, it's like a cult. Like a cult.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. And usually this course starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and ends 2 o'clock in the morning next day.
Intense.
Yes. 3 days. 3 days the same. And at the end of the third day, they give you a lot of, but you can do it if you want it. But if you want it, it's possible, because everything is possible.
Right.
Everything is possible if you want it. Everything is possible if you make your effort.
Just put your mind to it.
Exactly. Everything is, if you commit. If you commit, everything is possible. And
if you don't make it, you haven't committed enough.
Exactly. And what does it mean to commit? You need to bring 5 more people to the following course. If you don't bring 5 more people, then you are not committed enough. And they call you by phone every day. Hey, how are you? How are you? And do you have enough people now?
That's what people know as coaching.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, no wonder that it's difficult to offer coaching under that name then.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I first found your institute. Is because Monica Henaway told me about an institute in Mexico that offers existential dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's where dialogue came from. But still, you called it existential coaching when you wrote about it. So I wonder how, given that coaching has that kind of reputation in the country, what made you stick with coaching?
It's a difficult question, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to answer. In one hand, I have friends who are professional coaches, and I know their commitment, their professionalism, their ethics. I know they do a very good job, So in one hand, I have this knowledge, and in the other hand, I'm a rebel. So it's like, you say no, I'm gonna say yes, coaching. Then, but sometimes I'm not sure to continue doing it this way. So nowadays, I kept the name Existential Coaching, but I use more existential dialogue,
right,
or powerful conversations. I use more these 2 terms, but sometimes I use existential coaching. But any time I use existential coaching, I need to spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes explain people what do I mean by existential coaching.
Right. Yeah, it's similar with what I've experienced 2010, 11, 12, when I came out of my existential coach training. People told me don't use existential. Because there's so many misconceptions about what existential is, and it's like, these are, just philosophizing about nihilism, exactly. People just talk about death and how everybody's going to die and everything is meaningless, and that's not what it is at all. So I think I resonate with that slight rebellion attitude, because I thought well, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
So let's just go with that. And then, people hopefully will pick up on it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's a name. And usually when we offer these kind of conversations, just as your client that you talked about earlier, they come to you for the conversation because they have had either an experience of having a conversation with you, or somebody told them about a conversation with you, or they have heard you talk about it in some other way. Yeah. It's very rare that somebody Googles existential coaching and then just goes with somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
actually, this man, I told him, but this is not therapy. What you are asking me for is not therapy. Mm-hmm. And he answers me, I don't mind what you call it. I just want to have this kind of conversations with you.
Yes.
I don't mind what you call it, or how you call it. Yeah.
I hear that a lot, and I think it's such an important message to put out there, because so many coaches particularly are so concerned with what am I going to call it. And I think the only time it's really important what you're going to call it is when people see that first. If you put an advertising on Google or in a magazine and it says existential coach, then it's important that you think carefully about what you put out there. Yeah. So that people have an idea of what it is. And if people think that coaching is this or existentialism is that, then maybe don't use the words. Maybe use dialogue, or maybe say, I can help you make difficult decisions. Yeah. But most of the time, clients couldn't care less what you call it. But coaches are so caught up with finding the exact term that describes them.
Oh, let me tell you another story. Why I wrote my book, because I in the first place I don't feel a lot of interest to write this book, the Introduction to Existential Coaching, because I was writing another book on existential therapy, and I need to stop that book to write the existential coaching one. But I found an advertisement on the street. And it says, come, existential coaching. I read it and say, what it is, I'm interested. So I take a picture, and later on I call them and I say, okay, can you tell me what it's about? And when they give me the data, I saw this, is the kind of coaching I told you before.
No, fuck. Oh.
Yes.
Okay, I can see that I have to write this book, because otherwise people think it's that.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you, Yaqui.
Exactly. Okay. Yes, that's why I think I need to write this book.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's jump into that a little bit more. Do you have can you put existential coaching into a sentence, a framework? Do you have a definition for it? Or how would you tell somebody what existential coaching is in a nutshell?
Mm-hmm. I could say that it's conversation. Mm-hmm. It's a conversation where the coach is going to try to open a space and time to explore how are you building your experience about the issue you want to explore. Mm-hmm. Because someone want to explore anything. It could be a life topic or a business topic. But they want to explore some topic in their lives. Maybe because they cannot make a decision, or they feel guilty, or they feel confused about something. And I want to give them a space to explore in a deeper way as we can. How does he build this situation? How does this situation is made? And with that process, how is the different possibilities that are open, sometimes very obviously, but another times very often not so obviously, and sometimes even the people doesn't see alternatives at the first place. So with the conversation, we can find different alternatives, different possibilities about how this situation is built, how this situation is made, how the situation keep in the same way, and how the situation could going, how could follow from this point, and we can see different possibilities. And what I say is, what is very useful about that is that I am not push you to rush into any conclusion. I'm not going to push you to answer anything. I just want to help you to put every piece of the how do you call this? Rompecabezas?
The puzzle.
The puzzle, exactly. Every piece of the puzzle on the table. And then see each other, what can we do with all those puzzles, all those pieces of the puzzle. Yeah.
So I can see very much how that's radically different to what is considered life coaching for the majority of people here. You've come from a therapy background, but I know you've read widely around coaching.
Yeah.
How would you say it differs from other approaches to coaching? Because coaching is this huge umbrella term, right?
Yeah. You know, what I mainly discover is that a lot of professional coaching is very focused to solution. They're very solution focused. They really want to help people to get into an answer. They really want to help people to decide, to choose, a wiser choose. And for me, that is not important. If that happens, great. I'm not avoid that. But it's not what is the main task for me. The main task for me and the existential coaching we teach is the exploration process. Is the opening possibilities process. Is the awareness process. To become more aware of the different possibilities.
Right.
So
This is where we have phenomenology at
Exactly.
the heart of it.
exactly.
Could you say a bit more about how that grounds your practice for, most existential coaches listening or watching this will probably be somewhat familiar with phenomenology and how it works, but a coach who might not be steeped in existentialism, could you put a frame around that? Could you tell a little bit how that looks like in practice particularly?
Yeah. Well, what I can say is for me and for us in Mexico, the phenomenology is the main method of existential coaching, existential therapy, existential groups, or existential whatever. The main methodology is phenomenology. And for us, phenomenology is three things. First is a worldview. What does it mean? That we see the person, see the reality, see the human condition from a relatedness point of view, that we are all in relations, always. Not just social relations, but even with the chair, with the air, with the oxygen, with the COVID, and so on. No? We are all in relations. And this is very important in practice, because we don't just have our scope, our look at the person, but also to how do you relate with others in your life with this topic? How is the relationship with others and with other situations also? So relatedness is one. The other aspect is the focus on experience. For us, it's very important experience, not the theoretical issues, but the experience. How do you experience that? How is your experience? Maybe your experience could be different from others. How is yours? So this is very important for us. We call it the part of the worldview in phenomenology. The second aspect is what we call the attitude in phenomenology. And the attitude is mainly the unknowing. To embrace the unknowing, to embrace the uncertainty, that we don't know what is better. Our client doesn't know what is better, but we don't know what is better also. And sometimes my client could have some fantasies or some ideas about what is better for him. But I'm going to embrace unknowing. I'm going to say, okay, you say that you believe that is the best for you. But let me question that. Let us be open to see if any other possibilities emerge. So we try to hold an unknowing attitude, all the process, for the entire process. This is the second. And the third is phenomenology specifically as a method. And specifically as a method, we use a lot what we know as our natural attitude or our natural tendency to jump to conclusions, our natural tendency to build certainties, to believe our beliefs. So we try to problematize them, to put question marks instead of final point in our natural attitude, and we invite the client to do the same. We invite the client to, okay, you have those certainties. What about if we doubt about it? If we put some doubts about all those certainties that you have, all those certainties that I have also, then this is the methodology for us, of course, in a nutshell, the phenomenology as a method. Those three aspects are very important for us: the phenomenology as a worldview, the phenomenology as an attitude, and the phenomenology as a method.
Right. So somebody might listen to this and say, well, but I'm a coach and I'm not an existential coach, but I appreciate the unknown and I try to bracket my assumptions and I try to ask questions and not guide a client. I know there's more to that, so I wonder if we could illustrate that with an example. For example, how does that look like in practice? What makes the phenomenological approach different? By the way, it takes years to say this without rolling your tongue and putting a thought in it. It still happened probably in this conversation. But what would you say to a coach who says, well, I appreciate the unknown, I like to ask questions, I bracket my assumptions. How is this different?
Okay, well, first, let me go 2 steps back. And I think the best coaches make something very similar to phenomenology. I really believe that. Even if they don't have any training in phenomenology, a lot of them, in a very intuitive way, they made this kind of approach because they don't have this training in their coaching trainings. They don't have it, but they develop it.
And I see that a lot in trainings. They're like, oh my God, now I have words for it.
Yes.
Now I have a terminology. Now I know what I'm doing quite intuitively. Yes. And now I know why it works.
Exactly. Then the first thing for me is like, we are trying to train an tool, an ability that a lot of great coaches develop from their intuition. We just put a name and we are trying to develop in a more conscious way. But it's something human. It's something human. So how can we see this in a more concrete way? Let me think in an example, because I'm going to try an example of coaching. Okay, I have one client. I don't work with him now, but I work with him for maybe 4 months. This is another difference between coaching and psychotherapy for me, by the way. For me, psychotherapy are for long process, and coaching are for shorter ones. My average of time in therapy with the same client is maybe 3 to 4 years. 3 to 4 years is the average. With some of them 2, but with some of them I spent 8, 9 years in psychotherapy. And I love long processes. I love it. But in coaching, I never spend more than 6 months. Never. It's just because we focus in one specific topic. But in psychotherapy, we open the scope
to all the topics.
Exactly. So in coaching, we remain with one topic. So I remember this guy who he arrives with me. His motivation was he lost $6 million. $6 million in a business with Mexican government, because he put a lot of things for a some building, not building, build some situation not in the city, in the country, and with the change of government, when we change president, it's like all the business signatures and all that get lost. And he said, what, pay me. And the new government say, I could pay you if we saw the papers, but we don't see anything. Then
Difficult to sit with that.
very, very, very difficult. And very difficult for him. He was very angry, of course. And he wanted to know what to do about it. He said, because my options are, he says, first, to make a law case, the law case, with the law, with lawyers and all that stuff, trying to fight to the government to pay me. There's one option, of course. The other option is to move on, to forget it and move on, and to try to become more in a better situation from a different kind of business or something like that. This is my second option. My third option is to get really depressed and maybe suicide. I want to know which is the best option for me.
Sounds like a very cognitive way of putting it out there.
Yes, he is very, very cognitive. Yes, he is a very cognitive way, but at the same time, he is very powerful man. A business of $6 million is not a small business.
Yeah, no, he's a smart man.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches would immediately jump in there. Oh, let's do a pro and con list, or let's talk about in a cognitive way. How can we make sense of that?
Exactly.
Tell me about more. Explore this a little bit more. So the phenomenological approach has a different entry point into this conversation.
Exactly. And he also can come with me just once every 15 days. And not always the same day, and not always at the same time. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, but he could come to my office every time. And then we always meet in my office with him. But sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes on Monday, sometimes on Saturday, once on Sunday. And okay, for me, what's okay? I can do that, then why not? So
then what's the entry point into that conversation? Because it starts with a goal, right?
Yeah.
I want to make a decision and I have 3 options.
Yes, exactly.
So then phenomenologically, how do you start the process?
Okay. I start the process telling him, okay, I would like to know more about how do you get to these 3 options? Why no others, or why those 3 are not just one of them? Please tell me more about each one of your options.
Bracketing the assumption that these are the 3 options, and
Exactly. So tell me more about it. Then we spend some time pulling apart the different unpacking the different parts of each of the 3 options that he saw at the beginning. And after that, we start to be more and more aware that the 3 options has a lot of assumptions that he made years before. Years before, he made a lot of assumptions about how does it mean to work for the government, how does it mean to make money, how does it mean to be in the middle of a fraud or something like that. So we spent a lot of time with that, and a lot of feelings emerged in him. A lot of feelings. In one of the meetings, he started to tell me about his wife. Okay, let me tell you that I want to speak about my wife. I want to speak to you about my wife because I had a fight with her. So I say, wait, hold on. If you want, I can talk to you about your wife, of course, because I'm here at your service.
But the
If you
focus
want,
was this.
yes, if you want, we can talk about your wife, of course. But I just want to remember you that you hire me because you want to talk about your decision.
Wonderful piece of recontracting, just acknowledging it, not closing the door because it might just be relevant.
Yeah.
No, it usually is.
Yeah, exactly.
But letting the client make that decision.
Exactly. But if I were working in psychotherapy, I never do that.
Yeah.
You know, I just go with his wife. You know, but now I say, okay, wait.
You go with his wife. That's a bit unethical.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So he said, oh yeah, yes, thank you. No. I prefer to keep talking about my business.
Ah, okay.
So we go again to talk about his business. And other kind of conversation that we have is suddenly he become very emotional in during the conversation. And every time he become emotional, I ask him to slow down his rhythm, because sometimes he wants to move forward, you know, to the next topic or something like that.
Move on from the emotion because
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. I say, okay, come on, let's go slow down for a moment. Just stay with that for a moment and let's see what happens. Stay with that and just
here we are digging into the experience
Exactly.
that is happening right now and exploring that more rather than moving on.
Exactly. Yes, just keep for a moment. Just give me 2 more minutes. Give me 2 more minutes to dig in that experience that you are having now, and that is always very powerful, very powerful, and very powerful about the issue he's trying to develop or trying to know more about it, trying to decide or to make a decision. So let me see that after this, maybe we meet every 15 days for 6 months, more or less. Then maybe we see each other for 6 times, something like that. And at the 4th meeting, he suddenly said to me, you know, Yaqui, with our conversations, I just realized how stupid it is to try to fix this in just one way. Maybe I need to make a mixture of my previous options. Maybe I can mix these options because I cannot fight the government, but I don't want to stay just with my arm crossed. You know? I want to do something, but maybe not a fight with the government. And at the same time, what I realize now is that I don't want just to move on, but I need to move on because I need to make money for my family, for my workers. I need to recover from that situation. And I can do it. He said, I can do it. I lost $6 million, but I can make it $6 million again. That's my work. That's what I mean. That's what I make for a living.
Powerful realization.
Yes, yes. And third, yes, I'm depressed for that because it's the first time in my life I receive a lesson from the life that I'm not invincible.
Wow, what a powerful experience is that.
Yes.
And these didn't come out because you were guiding some sort of process towards it.
Exactly.
But because you were inviting him into the space where he can sit with his experience.
Exactly. To just open.
And new meanings came out of that exploration.
Exactly. So, in some way, it's very similar to therapy. Yes, but it's very focused in just one topic. And for a short term of time.
Right. Thank you for that. Beautifully illustrated as well. What else is there other than the phenomenological method, if we wanted to call it that, if anything? You know, I know in your book you write about some powerful questions. You write about 4 languages, the 5 orientations. Is there anything else that you use in existential coaching? Are there any kind of models, techniques, processes that you apply? Or is it just that, what you just described?
No, actually it's just that. You know, it's just that. For me, all that stuff are the tools that help me to really be there with the other one, with my client. Because for me, the most important thing is to be able to really be there for him or for her. Really be there. Really be open to receive any that he or she gave me. Be open to unpack everything that we knew or we suddenly discovered. And for me, that is the most important aspect of my job. It's the most important. As a psychotherapist and as a coach, is the most important. And the 4 languages or the powerful questions, the 10 questions and all that stuff are mainly something that helps me to don't lose my way, to keep me in my way.
Could you say a bit more about that? How does that fit in? How does that keep you on your way?
Yeah, I can talk about the 4 languages, for instance. The 4 languages is the first one is the physical language, the body language. The second one is more emotional language or emotional and social language. The third one is more rational language, more cognitive language. And the fourth language is more symbolic language, metaphorical language. What I realize is that sometimes people have a kind of specialization in like one or two.
The dominant language.
Dominant language, exactly. And some people the coaches, trying to take the coachee, the client, to the language who is dominant for the coach, or the language who is dominant in the theory that the coach manage, that the coach know.
Yeah. They feel most comfortable there. Very comfortable coach will,
Exactly. If, for instance, a Gestalt coach could ask more about your feelings. How do you feel? How do you feel in your body with what you're talking about? But for me, it's very important to keep at the level of my client. Maybe after 3 or 4 sessions, I can invite him or her to open his or her scope.
Yeah,
to include more.
There might be a different kind of solution if we switch the language.
Exactly.
If we first speak the same language, we're going to build a very strong relationship.
Exactly, but we must speak the same language at the beginning.
Right,
exactly.
So a good coach will then be versed in those languages or learn those languages.
Yes, I think so. So in this way, I try to really be for the other, for my clients, because I'm trying to connect with him or with her at the same level, at the same language that he or she speaks.
Right. It's a very NLP kind of tenet, right?
Yeah.
Different in terms of the language framework.
Yeah.
But it's very much speak your client's language, and that's not just the words we use or the type of language we speak, but also in terms of body language and in terms of tonality. If we meet somebody, they feel very good in our space because, imagine somebody speaks a different language to you.
Yeah.
That's going to be in the way of building a really strong relationship.
Exactly. I like something that Ernesto Spinelli used to say, that you need to earn the right to open the scope. You need to earn that right. And how do you earn it? Building a good relationship.
Right.
Building a good meeting, a good meeting point with the other.
So just because I mentioned NLP, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who were absolute super fans. Some be like, I don't want anything to do with NLP.
Yes.
There are some really interesting meeting points with Existential. Jamie Reed wrote a really good chapter in Existential Perspectives on Coaching with a wonderful title, Existential First, NLP Second. And it reminded me of that because when we consciously use a language different to our modus operandi, different to if we are for example, a very emotional coach, very emotional language coach, would consciously use cognitive language to build a relationship with that coachee. What do we do with that then? Because in NLP practice, you would then pace and lead. You would then, build rapport first, and then you would guide them into a different language where the coach thinks the solution is.
Yeah.
So in existential practice, how do you do that? Because sometimes we notice that, now we have this rapport, we are aligned right now. And as a coach, you then have a possibility to make a decision what the intervention will be now. And if you consciously open them up to a different language, for example, I think it can be really helpful, but also it puts you into a position of responsibility.
Yes.
Because now it's not directive as such, but it's somewhat directional, right? You influence the process here rather than it being fully client-led. So how do you experience that space? What do you do with that?
Yes. Well, first I would like to say that it's impossible not to have some influence in the other. We always have some influence. It's impossible not to. Even if I try to become very neutral, my neutrality influences the other. So we are always have some influence to each other. So what I want to do first is to acknowledge that I have my own being, and my being influences the other. For instance, it's not the same that when I work with someone that I am a man, and it would be different if I would be a woman, or I'm of this age. Or if I were younger or older, could be different. The influence that I could have, or I use the long hair, the ponytail. But if I use a really short hair, it's different, the influence and all the stuff. But also the way I feel, the way I talk, my thoughts. So first I need to be really aware of my own being. And that is also phenomenology, And I need to be really aware of my own being. Second, I need to be open to the other in whatever is the other, whatever is him or her. I want to be open to her or his existence, her or his experience. And in this way, I want to connect at the same level. I want to connect with the languages or whatever. I want to connect at the same level. And little by little, if we develop a good relationship, I earn the right to tell him or her, this what you see in this way, I see it in a different way. Can I share it with you? Do you mind if I share it with you? And I can share the way I see it. But after that, we told something about the golden rule. And the golden rule is anytime I share my point of view, anytime I share my feelings or my body sense or my beliefs or whatever, every time I share something like that or I try to move to a different direction, I need to ask him, how do you feel with that? Because I know I am putting some input here that it's mine. So I want to know how it's for you. And sometimes I need to be really aware because sometimes I can be bossy. And the other can say, oh, but you are the coach, so...
You must read Yalom's book.
Exactly. you are the coach or you are the therapist, then you must know something that I don't know. So if you say that I need to read Yalom's book, I'm going to read it. So I always try to say, okay, but wait. What do you think about, I just mentioned it. Yeah. What do you think? And if he say, oh, it's great. I say, how do you know it's great?
Yeah, so you must read Yalom's book is one way of doing it, but how I heard you speak about this or that, this book keeps coming to my mind.
Exactly.
Over and over again, over the last 5 conversations that we've had, it's this book. I have a strong feeling emerging in me that you should really read this.
Exactly.
What do you think?
Exactly.
Very different way of delivering.
Exactly, very different way. And if I say, oh yes, I want to read it, he could say me, how do you know? How do you know do you really want? Just because I say it? How do you know?
And then you start working with something.
Exactly, exactly. So then this is for me very, very, very important, this part, I know this is different from other kind of coachings, because for me, the difference between existential coaching and other kind of coachings is we don't try to jump into conclusions. We don't try to help the other to finish whatever they're trying to do. We're trying to develop more, to go deep, to unpacking more, to explore more, to put all the pieces of the puzzle on the table. That's what I want to do it. If that helps you to go into conclusion, if that helps you to make your decision, is great. But it's not my task that you get your decision or your choices. My task is to explore more in the more phenomenological way that I can.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You talk about powerful conversations, and you talked in the book about 10 powerful questions.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier that I hear that you hear that a lot in the coaching space, right? Powerful conversations. Coaching is a powerful conversation.
Yeah.
Often it remains very vague what that means.
Yeah.
But you put a framework around that and also produced some questions that could make that more likely that a powerful conversation emerges. Could you talk a little bit into that space?
Actually, could be a surprising for you the story of that term, because a couple of girls who works for a magazine who sells in the corner, a very popular magazine, asked me if they can make me an interview, because they want an interview of me in their magazine. And I say, of course. Then they came with cameras and all, because the magazine is also have a web page and have the interview in paper and in the web page. Then they have the video, and when they start to put all the stuff, they ask me three things. They say, please, we have just three needs. Please. Okay. Yes, please tell me. First, don't use the word existential. Don't use the word existential. And say, why not? Because the word existential have very bad reputation. Very bad reputation. But please don't say the word existential. Say, okay. Second, don't say the word therapy or psychotherapy. You say, why? Because a lot of people understand therapy or psychotherapy as something for the crazy people, something for the illness, for psychopathology. So please don't use therapy or psychotherapy. Okay. And third, don't use the word phenomenology. And I ask, and that's why? Because it's a very scientific term, and this magazine is just for the people on the street. Yes.
Is that right?
Plus, please use more common language.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, it was like a challenge for me, because these three words I use it every time.
Hello, I'm Yaqui, and that's pretty much all I can say about myself.
Exactly. So I say, what can I do? So we start the conversation with them, and suddenly when they say, well, how can you tell us in a nutshell what you do? What is what you do with people? So then I realized that, we try to build powerful conversations. And they love the term, and they use the term as a title of the article in the magazine. Let's build powerful conversations. That's why, yes, I got the term, and then I'm going to use it more. So, powerful conversation for me have some characteristics. One is the possibility of transform. It's a conversation that can transform any of the people who are in the conversation. Not just one. Could change any. That's the first, is the transformative power.
I just want to jump in there, because I think that's so important, because powerful conversations, as they're very often used in the coaching space, it's amazing that you had an access to that term, unbiased.
Yeah.
You hear powerful conversations a lot, but usually it's very one-sided. When coaches say powerful conversations, is for the client. The client transforms. And I think acknowledging that there's transformation, not just potential, but that it's actually crucial that the coach stays open to be transformed themselves.
Exactly.
It adds something very special.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, that is first. It's both. It's a mutual possibility of transformation. The second characteristic is based on experience. It's not based on theoretical issues or topics about the universe. It's very down to experience. This is the second characteristic. A third characteristic is the powerful conversations are based mainly on questions. We are open to question, and when we arrive to an answer, we try to make more questions about that answer.
Right, because knowing is the opposite of learning, right?
Exactly. So to keep going with questions, another characteristic is when we is the aesthetic characteristic, the aesthetic aspect of this kind of conversation. But I understand aesthetic from that point, from a couple point of view. First is something about beauty. It's something about beauty. You can have conversation that after the conversation you say, I hope we would record our conversation because it was a beautiful conversation. Then the powerful conversation could be beautiful, even if they are hurtful. Even if we touch or we pass from some difficult aspects, but they are beautiful conversation in one hand, and in the other hand, the aesthetics means we are very open to our senses. Okay? We are very open to what that we see, that we listen, to we feel in our skin, all that stuff. So they are very common. That there are conversations that are aesthetic in this way. I often say also that powerful conversations are conversations that you want more. After you finish that kind of conversation, you want more. You say, when did we have the next one? You want more. And another aspect is a conversation that suddenly you can start the conversation with some task in mind, with some objectives, some goals in mind. But at the middle of the conversation, those tasks, goals, and objectives, just you can forget it. It's like the talk, the meeting, the dialogue possess you.
So you might start the conversation with that in mind. You might have an intention that you want to learn something in that area, but as the conversation unfolds, that's not necessarily on your mind.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is another one, and maybe let me see if and where silence is invited to the table. We can spend some time in silence, or just keep silence for a couple of seconds, just to be more here with each other.
Right. So do you tell people, do you explain what a powerful conversation is, or do these happen organically?
Well, I explain it in training, when I train existential coaches, but with my clients, no. With my clients, I am just open to that happened. But I'm not, it's very, you can feel very tempted to start explaining to your client the kind of work you do, because we feel passionate about it, because we are in love with our work. Then of course we like to talk about this, like this conversation with you now. I enjoy it a lot. I'm happy. Of course, when I'm with my clients, I feel tempted to explain it, but it doesn't work. Then what's for?
And yet we put some framework around this. For example, before we started, it's like, it's going to be a relatively open conversation. I told you a little bit about what kind of stuff I'm looking for, what's the purpose of this conversation. So I wonder, in that sense then, what role does contracting play in your existential coaching practice? Because I know some coaches contract a lot so that the client knows what this is and what they're saying yes to, and they also somewhat learn how to use the space. While others, they just start opening the conversation and then it happens quite organically. And then maybe they contract sometimes in the process of like, could I ask you a challenging question? You know, some might say in the beginning, I might ask you some challenging questions as part of this conversation, or there might be a silence, and I would invite you to allow the silence and see what might come out of it, rather than to just fill it. So I wonder what you think about contracting, what role it plays in your practice.
I like to make the contract at the ending of the first meeting, not at the beginning, at the ending. And something that I can say is, what I can offer you is this conversation that we just have, that we just had.
Because then it's tangible.
Exactly. This kind of conversation with the question I made to you, with my comments I made to you, is the kind of conversation that I can offer to you. So, if you want it, I need some framework. And the framework is, okay, how many times do you want to see? And how often can we meet? Let's put this on the table. You can say, like this client I told you before, well, I don't know if I can do it on Monday or on Thursday. Well, we can agree of that, or we can have an agreement of every Monday at 4 o'clock. But what I need, in order, is not because this is coaching, it's because something that I need to order my own agenda, to have my schedule some order in my schedule every day. So I just ask you to help me to have this organized together. Let's do it. So we have a contract at the beginning, but it's not very, it's flexible, and we can change it over time. And sometimes it's very organic, like, okay, you call me whenever you need it, and I can say at the moment, okay, I can see you today, or maybe today I can't, but maybe I can see you tomorrow, and you can call me. And usually, when I offer coaching sessions, I ask for a commitment of 6 sessions along 3 months. Yes. Please commit with me to have 6 sessions along 3 months. If we have the 6 sessions one daily, in just 1 week, that's okay. Or one every week or whatever, that's okay. But try to commit to have 6 sessions on 3 months.
Right.
If after those 6 sessions or 3 months, you want more, maybe I'm going to invite you to start a psychotherapy.
Ah, interesting.
I'm going to invite you to start a psychotherapy. But we can decide another block of 6 sessions.
Right.
We can decide it. I can tell you that maybe half of my clients that search coaching with me, half of my clients after the 3 months period wants more, half. And from those half, the other half, on a quarter, agree to start a psychotherapy.
Right. And you said earlier that your coaching process and your psychotherapy process isn't necessarily different. It's just that one of the defining characteristics is that the therapeutic process is much longer and we can go anywhere.
Exactly.
It's less focused.
Exactly.
And less time bound.
Exactly. Yeah. And some of them who tell me, no, I really need this kind of framework, like more flexible framework, and I just need maybe just 3 or 4 more sessions, not so long. I say, okay.
So another focused intervention.
Exactly. Okay, let's do it. But I never work more than, not because I don't want it, because it doesn't happen, more than 3 blocks of 6. Yes.
Of 3 months. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. 3, and after the 3rd block, we end the process.
Why?
I don't know. That's the way it happens to me until now.
Right, so it's not a rule that
It's not a rule.
It's
It's not a rule.
that happens.
Exactly, it's something that happens.
Okay.
That I never, and it's just with 2 clients for coaching, just 2. The rest of them, mostly 1 or 2 blocks. 1 or 2 blocks from 3 months, and that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very organic. I need to there's a few questions I still wanted to ask. We covered quite a lot of that. I wonder, besides Frankl and Yalom, Rolomé you mentioned. Are there particular philosophies or particular philosophers, particular practitioners that have influenced your work?
Yeah, well, actually, Jan Rolomé and James Bugental influenced my work at the beginning, but nowadays is maybe less than 20% of my work is based on their ideas.
Right.
Nowadays, my main kind of my kind of work, my style of work is very influenced by Ernesto Spinelli. Very, very influenced by him. I have influence of Emmy Van Deusen also, and of course I read Monica Hanaway, and I like those books, and I have some influence, of course, but my main influence is Ernesto.
What is it about Spinelli's work that comes into your practice?
The unknowing and the relatedness.
Oh yeah, that was already very, very much there.
Yeah,
you already explained it.
Exactly. The unknowing and the relatedness, I got it from him. You know, I have just a little hint from other thinkers, but the way I understand it, I got it from him.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there something that emerged as uniquely yours, something that you found yourself doing but haven't really noticed other people talk or write about?
Yeah, no, well, this way of working, I realize is similar than Ernesto's. It's similar than other, like in the US, Todd Dubose. It's very similar. We talk a lot about his style and mine. We found a lot of coincidence. And with some other coaches from the ontological coaching, some of the ontological coaching came to study here with mine in the existential dialogue course, and after the course they told me, you know, it's the same that we learn in the ontological coaching. It's very similar, but here is less directive. That's what they told me.
Right.
Here is less directive and we'll like it more. Because when they don't like it more, they don't tell me. Yeah, of course. But when they tell me, they say, we'll like it more because here is less directive.
Okay. Good. What else is there? What's your position on research evidence base? Because I know there's Emmy particularly has made some efforts, I know Alfred Langley, for example, as well, to create some more evidence base for existential practice. Obviously, this is very much in the therapeutic space. Coaching psychology has been a science for a little while now, still very much a baby science. You're coming from a therapeutic perspective, but I also know you go to a lot of conferences. Well, what's your position on research evidence-based? Is that something that's important to existential coaching? Is that something that might be in the way? Is it impossible to capture what it is, given that every existential coach develops a very unique practice? What do you think about that?
First, I agree in every word that you just said. Yes, is for me the evidence-based or all these movement or even fashion, on the evidence-based methodologies are very difficult in the existential field because we have this style that not just acknowledge but respect the difference, the individual difference. Every existential coach develops a specific kind of existential coaching, as every existential therapist develops his own kind of existential therapy also, So it's very difficult to get into this fashion movement about the evidence-based. At the same time, I think maybe it's going to be easy for the coaching field than from the therapy field to get involved in the research and the evidence-based, because it's in a very more pragmatic world, in a more focused world, very long, short-term work and all that stuff. So I think in the coaching world is going to be more easy to have conversations with this interest in evidence-based. But if you ask me in a more personal way, I must confess that I'm not interested. Yeah, not at all. It's like, for me, it's not important. So I saw a lot of people very worried about it, with a lot of interest in the develop methodologies and research for evidence-based technologies or evidence-based techniques or whatever. And for me, it's like, wow, you are from a different planet than me, because I'm not interested in that. I'm not against that. It's just I'm not interested in that. I am lucky because I don't need it. I can acknowledge that. If I work in an institution that asks me, demands me that I need to show my research, to show the evidence-based techniques that I use, maybe I'm very interested in that. But I'm not part of that world, I'm trained therapist and coaches, and I don't need that for the training. And thank God or whatever, my consulting room is plenty with a lot of people. I have enough clients, and they never. My office. I don't used to put my diplomas in the wall. I don't like it. So I never put any diplomas in my walls. Never. I've been working as a therapist since 24 years ago. And in all these years, just one of my clients asked me about my diplomas. Just one.
Yeah.
The rest of them never asked me about it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't need it. No, what for? I don't need it.
Yeah. If the research is for the clients, the evidence base is to make somebody have trust and confidence in the space.
Exactly.
Then you don't need it.
I don't need it. Exactly. And let me say something else. And I think we have, as existential practitioners, coaching, therapists, groups, or whatever, as existential practitioners, we have the most important evidence. It's called experience. We work with experience every moment. I don't want to talk with you about theory. I want to talk with you about your experience. What other evidence, what I would like to have, that is the main evidence for me, your experience. So what other evidence would I want?
Yeah, the kind of evidence that the kind of research that I would want to do, and potentially this is a part of that research, is to have those kind of conversations with existential coaches, because part of it is it's just the individual practice, and I agree with everything that you're saying. What I think what can really help is when we try to figure out what the people who practice existentially and they also coach, they bring those two together, what do they do so that we can learn from that? And we can learn just as much from an individual case study, in an individual interview. Yeah. But once we've talked to, 15 existential coaches from around the world, and they all have phenomenological inquiry at their foundation of all their work, then we can say with some certainty that existential coaching has that as a defining characteristic.
Yeah. So, but let me ask you something. Do you call that an evidence-based research?
Well, it depends how you set it up, right? So let's say I have those 15 conversations with, the existential coaches in the world, and I record those interviews as we do now. Yeah. And then I apply a scientific method of analyzing. You
analyze the narrative.
I can do a thematic analysis, for example, and there's a particular process of how to run a thematic analysis. And if somebody else, once I write it up, somebody else can then take my research article, interview another 15 existential coaches that they know or in another part of the world, and they do a thematic analysis just the way that I did. And if they come up with the same results,
Yeah.
After a couple of studies, we can say with a degree of certainty, look, there's evidence here, and the evidence is well documented and done in a systematic way.
Okay. Then, I understand that. Yes. So the evidence here is not what we're doing, but it's the meta-analysis that you can do with these conversations and another conversations made later, and maybe with other interviewer or whatever, and then you can compare the data. And with this comparison, you can say, oh, look, this issue repeats always. So this is very important.
Enough times for us
to
say something that is meaningful.
Okay.
And I think that can be quite helpful, because then we can, the clients still don't care. You know, and the client who's sitting in front of you, it doesn't matter to that relationship necessarily. But I think it matters for our field, existential coaching. Yeah. Because we can then say, well, if we train existential coaches, then teaching phenomenology is going to be crucial, because that really defines existential practice. Yeah. And who knows what else we might find through all of those conversations, powerful conversations, or a certain kind of question, maybe even a certain process. If we were to record existential coaching sessions, and we record 1,000 of them, and then we analyze them for what kind of process emerges, maybe there's something there. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm curious, but it'll take some time.
Yes, of course. But what I like more of what you just say is that you're curious, because I like the curiosity. This is wonderful. But sometimes this same research could make it with a different motivation. Could make it with the motivation to make an assumption, to make a declaration about this is the valid one, this is the good one.
My process is the right one.
Exactly.
And then I can prove to my clients that my process is powerful because I have proof.
Exactly.
And I see a lot of coaches do that. Not in the existential coaching space, I don't really see that. In the positive psychology coaching space, I see that a lot. Yeah. Coaches who are also researchers, or coaches who do a piece of research to look into how effective their way of working is. Yes. And it's almost impossible to replicate it, because nobody can practice like Yaqui does. Nobody can practice like I do, because they're not me and they're not Yaqui. Yeah. So even if we were to take the time to write down the 10 questions we use with every client, if there were such a thing, you give those 10 questions to 10 different people, and they practice in 10 different ways, getting 10 different results. Yeah. So that's why I also question the meaning behind doing those pieces of study. At the same time, I would really like to know, I want somebody to do them so that we can see if they're there, if their motivation is right, and if they're trained researchers who keep their own biases in check. And, I believe in the scientific method when it's done well. Yeah, but when it's done well, it's motivated by curiosity. Yes. Exactly. Yes, but I saw a lot of people doing evidence-based research, and it's motivated by power. By demonstration that I'm the best one now. This is the best way to do it. And but I say no more. I get the experience.
Yes, and for instance, I like just what you say, because something that I like to say to my students when they are in the supervisee process, is the last process of their training, and sometimes they finish their training and they want more supervision. Something that I like to say in the supervision process is the best, for instance, you were Yannick, the best thing you can offer to your client calls Yannick. That is the best that you can offer to your client. And the best I can offer to my clients names calls Yaqui. Not existential coaching, not the 10 questions, not the 4 languages. No. Yeah. It's Yaqui or Yannick or whatever. It's whatever of us.
I did consider that at some point. It's still on my mind somewhere that maybe instead of calling it coaching or supervision, rockets or whatever it is, just call it sitting down with Yannick.
Yeah, exactly.
But people don't Google that.
Exactly.
Yet.
Or could sounds very pretentious.
Yeah, well, yeah, depends how you look at it, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else do we have? Oh yeah, who's Rebecca Espinosa? I noticed you mentioned her in a book, and I got curious.
Rebecca Espinosa is one of the teachers here in the Círculo Existencial. And she studied here with us in the first groups, like 15 years ago, more or less. And she's quite brilliant.
You say that in an interesting way.
Yes, it's brilliant because it's amazing. Because she's very intelligent and very passionate. And I think she's a promise because she's very young. So I think she's a promise. She can do a lot of things.
She's a promise?
Promise because she can develop a lot. You know, she's young with a lot of passion. So I can see Rebecca as someone who can develop a lot of existential way of thinking in coaching and therapy also, you know. And we discovered maybe a couple of years ago, she is a very good interpreter from English to Spanish also. And she's going to be your interpreter today.
Excellent.
Yes, because she is very good doing that. It's a difficult work.
Yes,
It's
yes.
very difficult. And she does it very well. But she's even better therapist and teacher. Is now one of the teachers here, you know. And yes, she's interesting. Yona is an interesting lady, very nice to relate to her. It's very easy to relate to her, and very intelligent. So,
what was the influence on the book? Because you mentioned her in the Existential Coaching book, I believe.
I was one of the first who read it and who made comments.
Ah, right.
Yes, I gave the book to a three person to read it before give it to the printer. And they read it, they make comments, and I take their comments in account. I made some changes on the book, and maybe the comments from Rebecca was the more helpful for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, fuel, maybe if there's any of the others. Oh yes, I had a question here about who existential coaching is for. And because like there's some big questions, right? I mean, it could be applied for almost anything.
Sure.
You mentioned some people in the organizational space. So I wonder if there's a target group for existential coaching, if there's a particular group of people or a particular kind of issue or challenge or goal that existential coaching would be great for. And I'll ask a follow-up question soon.
Yeah, I can say first people who don't want or cannot or doesn't have time for therapy. First, if they don't have time or they don't like therapy or whatever, this is an option.
So it could be a substitute for therapy.
It's not exactly a substitute because it's not the same.
Yeah.
But more than a substitute is like an alternative. An alternative when psychotherapy is not the best option because it implies a lot of time, a different kind of commitment.
Yeah.
It's more rigid. You know, the commitment that psychotherapy asks for is more rigid, and in coaching is more flexible. So people who cannot commit in therapy or doesn't want to commit in therapy. Second, people who don't have the time because they need to have this conversation maybe just 3 months or 4 months. Some of my clients, for instance, they came to me and they say, I'm here in Mexico just for a couple of months and I want to have some sessions with you. Then I said, okay, then we are going to have coaching because I don't offer therapy in 2 months. But if you want, we can have conversations. Of course, I just want to call it coaching. Is that good for you?
Yeah.
So some people doesn't have enough time, in length. And this is another. Third is some people who want to focus in a specific topic, a specific topic that they want to go deep in that, and they don't want to go to a different topics, to a different situations and all that stuff. And I think those is the main characteristics, but I can add a couple of situations, but those are actually also valid for existential therapy. People who doesn't want to talk about their past. Say, yes, I want to talk about some issues in my life, but I don't want to go into my daddy and mommy issues, No, I just want to talk about the here and now. For example, those kind of people also, but existential therapy could help them also. And people who say, I don't want to be seen as someone who has as a pathology. I don't want to be seen with diagnosis. I want to see as a human being. And this is valid for coaching, but also for existential therapy. Yeah.
And what's the relevance for existential coaching in the organizational and leadership space? I know in your book you separate, but you differentiate between personal coaching and professional coaching. What can existential coaching particularly offer to clients in organizations or in leadership positions?
I think in this world where we have a lot of solution-focused methodologies, and a lot of the business world usually are very involved in the solution focus. They really want a solution and fast, and without any effort.
Ideally.
Yes, and cheap, of course. So in this world is difficult, but not impossible. We as the Círculo Existencial, the Existential Circle, was hired by a company 3 years ago, and they came to me and asked, I need 4 coaches for my 4 main directors in the company, because we have a lot of conflicts in the company, and please help us. And we ask you for 4 coaches, each one of them for the 4 main directors. Then we made a plan, we offered them, and we went to the company to offer the coaching for them in this plan, 4 coaches to 4 directors. And after the 6 sessions with each, they have a group session, group coaching session with all of them, because they have a lot of interpersonal conflicts.
So this is where the existential particularly comes in, because of the focus on the relational experience.
Exactly. When there are issues on interpersonal topics or interpersonal conflicts or leadership, we have a lot to do in those aspects, a lot to do, a lot to offer, when it's more in terms of something that they need to, a concrete solution, a more practical solution, is more difficult to us to get in this field, But when it's more interpersonal, it's very easy, very easy. And I would like to become more involved. No, I would like, if I would have time, I would like to get more involved in that kind of coaching. But with the training and my own clients, it's difficult for me. But I think there is a very good opportunity for existential coaching in the area of leadership, in the area of the interpersonal conflicts or mediation. We have a lot to offer there. And my students, the people who train here, and they stopped at the coaching program, because for us, everyone have to study first Diálogo Existencial, or Existential Dialogue, is the coaching program. Everyone, and it's the first year. And those of them who want to become therapists, they can continue to study for 2 more years for the existential therapy program.
Okay.
But you cannot go to the existential therapy program directly.
Right.
You need to go to the existential coaching first.
Okay.
But there are some people who, when they finish the existential coaching program, they say, thank you, that's enough for me. I don't want to become an existential therapist. I just want to become an existential coach. That's okay for me.
Right.
Well, maybe those people, maybe more than the half, maybe 80% work in this kind of field, in leadership, in mediation, in companies. Some of them are already inside the company.
Yeah.
You know, they are not hired by the company as I'm a coach and the company came here. No,
They have the relationships already.
yes,
Then
with the
they have
company.
skill set.
Exactly, with the company. You know, for instance, some people who came here are the directors of the human resources area on their company. Then we have a lot of human resources directors. They train in existential coaching and they use these skills in their companies.
I really appreciate that kind of development because it has so much to offer, and yet most people wouldn't call that existential. But once you know what existential is about, you immediately realize the relevance and how it can be applied in very practical ways.
Yeah.
It's not an armchair philosophy at all. And especially in the leadership field, I mean, we live in nauseating times, and talking about the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, we can say it is philosophy, but it's a different kind. You know, because it's a vivid philosophy, it's a experiential philosophy. It's lived, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I'm loving this conversation too. Cool. I've just got a few kind of short ones. They can be longer, but they could also be quite short. What are 1, 2, 3 books that you would recommend every coach who's interested to become an existential coach or any existential coach to have read?
Yours.
Obviously. And yours?
And mine, yes. Yes, I really like your book. I really like it. So it's not because you are here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I can say read the Yannick Jacob book. Yes. I also recommend mine. Yes, my book. And I also recommend the Handbook of Coaching. And this book is from different authors and different ways.
Makaruffer and
Yes.
Clutterbuck.
Exactly.
There's one other author.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that one.
Cox, I think.
Cox, exactly, Cox.
Yeah.
That one I find it really useful, very interesting, with a lot of topics that help me to have a broader image about what coaching is. So I recommend that one. I recommend the compilation that Emmy Van Deursen does. Do you remember the name?
Existential Perspectives on Coaching.
Exactly.
The one with Monica.
Yeah, the one with Monica. Yes, and
lots of great, fantastic people in there. When I was trained existential coaching, a lot of my trainers contributed chapters to their book. So when the book launch happened, that was basically our course book. And I was a year and a half into my master's when the book came out. So it should have been our course book from the beginning, but it wasn't published yet. So at the book launch, I met all of my trainers again. It was a wonderful experience. And it's really quite versatile because it's not this is existential coaching.
No.
These are existential perspectives on how other people coach.
Yeah.
And they don't call it existential, most of them.
Yeah. Well, I like that book also. And I don't know, I never met Monica Hanway in person. We exchanged a couple of mails sometime, but I love her books, especially her books. You know, I found it clear, easy, and profound at the same time.
Yeah. So there's the handbook of existential coaching, and she wrote 2 on
leadership. Yeah.
So I can recommend them as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Any advice for a coach who wants to enter the existential coaching space, or comes to you and says, Yaqui, I want to be an existential coach, other than enrolling in your course, reading a book?
Get some good training, please. Yes. Other than get some good training and have good readings, be patient. Be patient, because sometimes the people get very easily tired. They feel like they are in a rush. They want more quickly to have some answers, to have some results, and we need to be patient with ourselves, with the coaching, the world of coaching, with the coaching in the world, and with existential coaching especially. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think that's fantastic advice. Which other existential coach would you love to have a conversation with? Because as you know, I'm planning to bring coaches together. I'm wondering if there's somebody who you would love to talk to.
Maybe I don't know if she works, what she does calls coaching, but I'm very interested in the way she approach to mediation, to Karen Waxel Dixon. Yes, I invite her to here in Mexico to lead a workshop about interpersonal conflict. But this weekend, when she was working here, I broke my wrist. So I spent the whole workshop in the hospital. So I don't listen to her lecture. But I read the notes that the students made. Please give me the notes. So I read the notes and I found it very interesting. And I read her book, Interpersonal Conflict, and I found it helpful also. So I would like to know more about the way she works with mediation of conflict. And I think this could be very useful in the coaching world. Maybe I've been hired for maybe 6 or 7 times to have group coaching with a group of people who are the owners of a company, and they are still become start to have a lot of conflicts between them. I remember one company who the owners was a marriage, but they divorced. And the company was very successful, but with their divorce, the company starts to have a lot of conflicts. And they have 2 other associates, 2 other owners. There are 4 owners, and they asked me to help them with coaching sessions. And I work with them maybe 6 sessions, 1 block, just 1 block. No, 2 blocks. Yes, 2 blocks. And Karen Waxel Dixon book helped me a lot in the work with them.
Yeah.
So I will have to have a conversation with her about it.
Oh, fantastic. You might, one of Monica Henaway's recent books was Tales of Conflict.
Yes.
Because she's also a mediator. Actually, she trained me in mediation with 2 other existential coaches as well, who also do mediation. And existentialism is essentially a philosophy of conflict and of inner conflict and the kind of tensions and dilemmas that we sit with. It's ideal for that.
Yes, so, and group coaching deals a lot with that, with conflict.
Fantastic. Cool. Where can people find your work? If somebody's listening to this, then how can people enter your sphere, find out more about you? Obviously, there's your book. What can people look up to? How can people get involved?
Mainly through my webpage,
which
is www. Is my name Yaqui Andrés Martínez. It's Yaqui with Yaqui, Andrés Martínez.
I'll
dot
put the
com.
link.
Thank you. .com. Through my webpage, I post when I have a course or a lecture, or I have a part of the page with my publications, with all my books and some articles also.
There's 2 articles on existential coaching. If somebody doesn't take the time to read the whole book, that will be a fantastic starting point, I reckon.
Yes.
Oh, they're Spanish, but Google Translate does kind of a job.
Yes. Perfect, for instance. And the web page of my institute, the Existential Circle. And the web page is www.circuloexistencial.org or org. Circuloexistencial.org. I think those are the main ways, because in both pages you have this link contact, like the exactly.
And then they need to find you at a conference and ask you for dinner. Yaqui, thank you so much. Any last words?
Any what?
Any last words? Anything you wanted to say?
Any last word? Well, thank you very much. I enjoy a lot our conversation, and I enjoy a lot our similarities, even in our name. Because Yaqui and Yannick is something similar.
Well, the why makes us curious.
Yes. So I enjoyed a lot this conversation. I enjoy your presence. So thank you very much, Yannick. Thank you for your work, because I think we need to be more and more to work in this kind of work to develop it more. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you also.
Thank you.
Thank you.